All names have been de-identified to uphold confidentiality. I have just completed my final placement in Singapore, where I was placed at an acute hospital called TTSH. The question that I will be asking myself is, what were the enablers and barriers that I faced throughout the OT process, and what have I learned from it? So I met Mr. Hawk, and he is a friendly and chatty 81-year-old man who came into TTSH for an elective total hip surgery. Within the practice context, the OT is to see hip replacement patients on their post-operation day 3. So I entered and initiated the OT process with Mr. Hawk on the 3rd day after his surgery. In my first session with Mr. Hawk, I was not able to complete my initial assessment with Mr. Hawk as he was experiencing sharp pains on his left hip and was also receiving blood transfusion due to the decreased blood count in his hemoglobin. Within this practice context, once a patient is on blood transfusion, they are to be in complete rest in bed. So, however, due to Mr. Hawk's friendly and chatty effective factors of the CE model, I did manage to build rapport and trust with him and his wife, which enabled us throughout the OT process. Initially, it took us a while to understand each other due to the language barrier, as Mr. Hawk could only speak Chinese. He only completed 6 years of his education, which limited his ability to speak in English. However, with much effort, I realized that we understood a common language, which was the Bahasa Melayu. And apart from that, as his wife had came in later in the sessions, he identified that his wife was educated in English, and she was also happy to translate for the both of us. A barrier that I faced throughout the OT process was also my inability to follow up on Mr. Hawk due to the heavy caseload received. Within the practice context, each OT had a quota of 13 patients to see within a day. This is due to the institutional factor of the practice context, whereby they need fast discharge. So therefore, this also so therefore the OT had a quota of 13 patients to see within a day, and as a student I had to see 8 patients a day. So this limited my time to see Mr. Hawk, because apart from seeing 8 patients at TTSH, it was required of me to follow my supervisor to 2 different settings, one of which was a hospice and a community center for people with Parkinson's disease, where I also had to run groups and individual sessions. So this limited my time at the ward to see Mr. Hawk. And another barrier is that sometimes in the mornings, there would be other professionals like the pain management team, physios, nurses or doctors who would also come and see Mr. Hawk in the morning, thus also delaying his availability for me to see him. However, an enabler was that despite my efforts to see him in the mornings, somebody within the OT team would help to cover my cases in the afternoon while I go to the other settings in the afternoon. So having had to go to 3 different work sites and cope with reaching my quota of patients to see within half a day was personally very stressful. And upon reflection, I realized that I was so caught up with getting my caseload done that I had lost focus in seeing Mr. Hawk holistically as an occupational being. I realized that I had not taken his spirituality into account, which made me more functional focused and not occupationally focused. So part of Mr. Hawk's spirituality was that he enjoys socializing and going out into the local coffee shops, otherwise also known as the kopitiam within the Singapore context. He expressed feelings of boredom and frustrations staying in bed in the hospital bed, leading him to experience occupational deprivation. Because part of the practice context within TTSH is that patients do not have the autonomy to move about. So one of his personal traits that was an enabler was his value of independence, motivation, and determination to do well in therapy, so that he can recover at home and eventually go back to visit the kopitiam and socialize with his friends. Having had realized this, I was able to educate Mr. Hawk and explain that before he can cope at the kopitiam and remain independent, he was to learn to care for himself at home and to ensure smooth recovery before he can go back to the kopitiam. So this provided him with great insight for therapy. So I've learned that it is essential to never lose focus of one's meaningful occupation, and in order to do that, we have to practice person-centeredness through the use of our OT models. Thank you.